Welcome to your Essential Business Briefing. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, as drugs companies announce promising results from their coronavirus vaccine tests, we look at the expectations of profits that could be made. Why a so-called Zoom boom is helping some countries' economies to recover faster from the pandemic recession. And online shopping reaches new heights during lockdown, with cars and even homes being sold via virtual viewings. We've now had several doses of good news from the pharmaceutical industry on a coronavirus vaccine. The drugs being developed by Moderna and the duo of Pfizer and BioNTech have proved highly effective in late-stage testing. That news boosting global share markets as investors start to look forward to life after Covid-19. Let's get more insight now into the market reaction with Michael Hewson, Chief Market Analyst with CMC Markets. Michael, we've seen these series now of rallies every time we've got good news on a vaccine in recent days. Is this now a done deal for investors? Are they considered this accomplished?
I certainly think investors have got used to the idea that we've got a vaccine candidate or several vaccine candidates coming down the line. I think the only real unknown is around whether or not we're going to get it by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. So certainly I think the market response initially, when the Pfizer news came out just over a week ago, I think was much more marked in terms of the market reaction, simply because it came out of almost like a bolt from the blue. The Moderna news wasn't so much of a surprise, because I think once you've got one vaccine candidate, then the thinking is that potentially others are likely to come down the line. And that certainly proved to be the case.
What are the next hurdles that the markets and investors will be watching out for in delivery of these vaccines?
These early stage trials are very positive. Getting sign-off from regulators is likely to be the next step. Concerns about side effects are always going to be a concern. And I think the bigger concern at the moment is really about how long do these shots actually give you immunity from the virus from? And ultimately, once you've had the shot, does that also mean that you can't pass the virus on? So I think from an investment point of view, I think the initial gains are probably about as good as it gets, because I think now, as we look ahead towards the delivery of a vaccine, the focus is now more about how are we going to get it out there? How are we going to get people to take it? And more importantly, are we able to get it out in a manner that is not going to significantly affect the problems that are being faced by European economies and general economies at the moment because of rising virus cases right now.
Is there an expectation for investors that these companies are going to make huge profits from this vaccine, that it's going to be very good for the business as well as good for, I suppose, all of us in general?
Well, I think initially it's going to be very good for the brand for pharmaceuticals. I think there's been an awful lot of bad publicity in recent years about price gouging and the like. So I certainly think in terms of finding a speedy vaccine to a fairly new virus, I think goodwill is likely to be extended to them in the short to medium term. It's also, I don't think they've also been hurt by the fact that governments have thrown billions of dollars in terms of R&D spend at these companies to develop a vaccine. So I think in the short to medium term, I think the profit motive is neither here nor there. I certainly think in the longer term, there's potential for profits in terms of booster shots going forward and other developing technologies as a result of this fairly new technology. RNA actually hasn't been used in the development of vaccines. And I think as a result of that, there could be some spin-off benefits for pharmaceutical companies going forward.
Are there other sectors out there we should be watching for future benefits? There's a lot of talk, for example, around storage and transport of these vaccines now. Is that potentially something that investors should be looking out for future gains in companies as the vaccines rolled out?
In the short term, I don't think so, because obviously we still need to get through the next 3 or 4 months. And ultimately in the UK, in France and in the US, we are still having to deal with the virus as it is now, with increasing hospitalizations, increasing mortality. So I think it really depends on whether or not an awful lot of these companies, and I'm talking airlines, I'm talking hotels, I'm talking retailers, whether or not governments can afford the fiscal support to tide these businesses over until the end of the first quarter of next year. And then we can then think about the longer term benefits that a vaccine will have on airlines, on hotels, and on retailers. But I certainly think we're in a much better place than we were 2 or 3 weeks ago. And in that context, and we've already seen it in some of the share price reactions in terms of airlines, hotels, retailers, and bars and pubs and wine bars and that sort of thing. We've seen the benefits from that in the past few days and few weeks. If these businesses can survive into the early part of next year, then there's certainly, I think, an awful lot of money to be made for investors in some of the more depressed parts of the stock market.
What about the flip side of that? We've seen, as the vaccine news has come out, a sell-off in the so-called stay-at-home stocks, those companies that were doing well when people were destined to be at home. Surely we're not giving up on the likes of Zoom for the future. We're still seeing some potential in their technology.
Oh, there's absolutely. There is plenty of potential in the tech stocks. I think what you're seeing at the moment is these particular stocks that you mentioned Zoom. You can also look at Amazon. You can look at Facebook, and a whole host of other tech companies that have seen a significant boost in the value of their share prices. They will still continue to do well, but at the moment they're a little bit frothy. So what will happen, I think, is that money will come out of these particular stocks and it will be rotated into the more depressed parts of the stock market. So what I think will happen is you'll have a period of slightly lower valuations in terms of the tech sector before a stabilization and a resumption of normal service, because ultimately this pandemic has changed the way that we live. That is not going to change. We will still have to social distance, we will still have to wear face masks, and we will still have to practice good hygiene for at least the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay, Michael Hewson from CMC Markets, thank you very much. Now, the world's third largest economy, Japan, saw its first signs of recovery from the coronavirus recession. It saw growth of 5% between July and September, the first quarterly expansion in a year. Japan's economy minister saying the recovery is a work in progress. Many major economies are bouncing back from recession, but at different speeds. Kate Moody's been looking into this. Kate, what have you found out?
Stephen, we're seeing a faster and more convincing return to growth in some Asian economies, while many European nations and the US, although also showing signs of growth, could head into a double-dip recession as they tighten lockdown measures. China is expected to be the only major economy to grow in 2020. Data from Oxford Economics, which analyse health, labour, production and consumption trends, among others, suggests that there are more warning signs in the US and the Eurozone, where more restrictions have been put in place and where momentum has now stalled. The economic recovery in China and much of the Asia-Pacific is still going full steam ahead.
So what explains the diverging trends?
Well, the main factor was their swift public health response, which helped to contain the spread of the virus quickly. More recently, they're benefiting from what some analysts have described as the Zoom boom. More than ever, people around the world are relying on online meeting platforms to stay in touch and work. Asian economies are the top producers of the smartphones, laptops, tablets, and other electronics that make that possible, and so their manufacturing output has recovered quickly. There's also been a rebound in consumer spending and domestic travel in China, for example, during the Golden Week national holiday.
So what could help to boost the recovery in the places that are lagging behind?
Well, the short answer is getting the virus under control. That could mean an effective vaccine. Expanded and rapid antibody testing could allow people to start traveling again, and that would be a real breakthrough for economies that depend on tourism. Economists agree that ongoing monetary and fiscal support will be crucial to avoid a wave of bankruptcies and layoffs. In the longer term, economic activity in the Asia-Pacific region could be boosted by a new trade deal, which has been signed by 15 nations. And in Europe, progress on a post-Brexit trade deal could also help recovery here.
OK, Kate Moody, thank you very much for that. Now, lockdowns in many parts of the world have once again pushed shoppers to make more purchases online. While sales of big-ticket items like cars and homes plunged during the first lockdown earlier this year, this time around, sellers have rolled out new tools to help. Peter O'Brien has the story.
Khaled Amar knows he's got the key to selling property in a lockdown. Bonjour monsieur, c'est pour la visite virtuelle de votre appartement.
Allez-y, c'est au premier.
Thanks to his omnidirectional camera.
In each room, we position it in the ideal spot, so the buyer can visit the whole flat virtually.
It takes 30 minutes to capture the entire property in 3 dimensions. The images are then uploaded to a website so buyers can take a look around and even see a detailed photographic floor plan. The owners spent €278 on the service and has no doubts about the value added.
Private visits aren't allowed at the moment, so one way to get a better sale is to use digital tools like this one.
On property websites, including a virtual visit increases your chances of selling.
Listings offering virtual visits receive on average 76% more clicks than others. And these properties also get sold more quickly.
Houses aren't the only big purchase people are making online. Cars are being sold this way too.
Enchanté Jean-François. En quoi puis-je vous aider?
In this showroom, Nathalie Chenonnier is on a video call with a customer. Peugeot receives up to 500 calls like this daily. But for those in sales, it's not always easier this way.
It will never replace a real human relationship. When you're on a video call, you can't experience all the sensations of trying out a car.
Even before the virus, things were trending towards the virtual marketplace. A study released at the start of the year estimated that 6 million vehicles would be sold online in 2025, compared to around 800,000 last year.
Well, our virtual sales pitch to you is all of the previous episodes of People in Profit available to watch on our website, france24.com. And in the meantime, you can find us on social media for your comments and questions. Until next time, thanks for watching.